Hi everyone and welcome to English Digest. I'm Pat.
I'm Leah.
And we're starting our travel article for this month, which is taking us to the European and Asian country of Turkey or Turkey. I was pronouncing it the sort of way I've grown up pronouncing it, but I guess that's changed as well as the spelling over the last sort of few years.
Yeah, now they want to officially use the Turkey pronunciation
as well.
From my understanding of things.
Yeah, I'd read the spelling. I'd seen that change, but I never realized it. I thought for some reason it was pronounced the same way, just spelt differently.
Right, you would think so, but I think it's probably coming from Turkish more than like the Americanized or the Englishized version of what we think it should sound like. Because a lot of times, when you are a native English speaker, you'll hear a name in another country and then you'll turn it into your English version of it, right?
Yeah. Now, this change was made because they decided they wanted to kind of just move it away from like Turkey the bird and recognize more of their own culture in there as well. Because, of course, the country's name comes from the Turkish people who came from like Central Asia and took over the country from other people 500, 700, however many hundred years ago.
Thousands, I think, even.
Yeah, probably.
In that general area, right? It's a thoroughfare from east to west, and it has been for centuries. It's quite a fascinating place that we are going to look at over the next couple of days. I didn't know this much about Turkey, and I was just fascinated to find out everything we will learn.
Yeah, I've had some friends who've been visiting one kind of beach resort area in there for years, and they love just to go back every single year because they have so much fun. The weather's beautiful, the food's great. So I definitely know it's not somewhere you immediately think of as a destination, but it seems definitely worth it. So let's read through day one of our article and learn more. People often associate Turkey with the busy streets, grand mosques, and lively bazaars of Istanbul, but the country's diverse cultural and natural treasures extend far beyond its capital. Let's take a look at other fascinating destinations. Our first stop is Safranbolu, a town where history feels alive. As you wander through its cobblestone streets, you're greeted by timber-framed houses. Among these historic buildings is Cinci Hamami, a centuries-old Turkish bathhouse that offers a taste of a traditional bathing ritual. To enjoy a Turkish bath, you'll have your body thoroughly scrubbed and massaged with soap after sweating in the steam room. Just a few steps away from the bathhouse is the Kaymakamlar Travel House, a museum that used to be a mansion for the local governor. Furnished in the style of Ottoman architecture, the museum allows you a glimpse of life during the Ottoman Empire. In fact, the town set a model for urban development throughout the empire when it began to function as a trading center. The well-preserved buildings that survive today have consequently earned Safranbolu a spot on the UNESCO World Heritage List. However, don't confine your visit to Safranbolu's downtown areas. Hike to Hirdirlik Hill for an overlooking view of the town's red-tiled roofs. In the meantime, Tokotla Canyon awaits those not afraid of heights, with a glass platform suspended from the edge of the cliff to offer breathtaking views 80 meters above the ground. Finally, before you depart, don't miss out on the classic souvenir, Turkish Delight. These are tasty sweets, and those sold in Safranbolu are generally cheaper and less sweet than in Turkey's main cities. So we start off by talking about the things that people often think of when they think of Turkey, and say people often associate Turkey or Turkiye, is that it?
Turkiye,
with the busy streets, grand mosques, and lively bazaars of Istanbul. The country's diverse cultural and natural treasures extend far beyond its capital. So to associate something is to make a connection between those things. Often in your head, you go, okay, this thing relates to this thing. You connect those two ideas up. people might say Taiwan, and you might associate that with a picture of Taipei 101, maybe some night markets.
Some boba tea or bubble tea.
Yeah, people might associate the UK that, oh, you guys all drink tea and talk in nice accents and are polite.
And have double-decker buses.
Big double-decker, but yeah, London, the Queen, or the King now. Yeah, all of that stuff. Those are ideas you associate. So it's this idea of making a mental connection to connect all these ideas that you have up together.
And what we are making an association with is the busy streets, the grand mosques, the lively bazaars, and, well, just the cultural and natural treasures that you find here. So you connect it to these grand mosques. A mosque is a temple or a religious building for Muslim followers who want to go in and pray, right? And a bazaar is a place where it's an open-air market filled with, lots of places, like Dihuajie, if you've been to Taipei's Dihuajie, full of lively colors, full of beautiful spices, full of lovely flavors. And what are we doing here? Well, we're associating Turkey with those busy streets. We're associating it with those grand mosques. We're connecting it to those lively bazaars. But, well, there's a lot more that we're going to take a look at. So let's take a look at other fascinating destinations. Let's go on from there, and we'll see our first stop is Safranbolu, a town where history feels alive. I love this expression, history feels alive. It's like you feel like you're walking into history. It's like you're watching Night at the Museum, those movies where all of the different figures in the museum come to life. And that's what it feels like when you're on the streets in Safranbolu.
So, yeah, and the streets themselves are quite interesting. We describe them here as people wandering through its cobblestone streets. Cobblestones are just usually round or kind of irregularly shaped stones that have all just been set together on the street, and it's been filled up with mortar. So the streets aren't like cement streets. Right. They're not like the ones we're used to in cities. They're slightly bumpy. They're not great for driving on.
Not comfortable if you have motion sickness.
Yeah, but they are very pretty, and there's kind of a nice feeling to walk on because they are very smooth. Right. So they make you think of old towns. There are parts of the UK which still have cobblestone old streets and areas around where it's not just big flat blocks of cement or tarmac road or anything like that.
So you have the cobblestone streets, and you're greeted by timber-framed houses. So houses, timber is wood, right? So wood-framed houses. And among these historic buildings is Tsinsi Hamami. We're kind of going with what we think we're doing right for pronunciation. Excuse us a little bit.
We are guessing a lot on some of these names because Turkish is one of those languages where it definitely isn't spoken the way it looks on the paper. So it can be a little bit of a guessing game.
And that is a centuries-old Turkish bathhouse that offers a taste of a traditional bathing ritual. And if you look at the pictures of this bathhouse, it's just a whole bunch of domes piled in together. It's very pretty with the red tile domes that we mentioned later in the article. And a bathhouse is a place where in past days, sometimes still in modern days, people will go and they take their bath. Instead of maybe having baths at home, you would go to these public bathhouses. You might get a massage. You might also get into a steam room and open up your pores. And bathhouses are very common in a lot of places historically.
Yeah. Japan's got them. Yeah. Ancient Greece and Rome had them. And what is a Turkish bath? What makes it a little different? The article says to enjoy a Turkish bath, you'll have your body thoroughly scrubbed and massaged with soap after sweating in the steam room.
Interesting. Yeah,
so you go into the steam room, very hot, you sweat out all the kind of dirt and oil that you've got trapped inside your skin. Then you'll be scrubbed, so a fairly rough kind of cloth to kind of rub you down, and then massage with soap. So to massage somebody is to kind of really rub into the skin. They're kind of really trying to put some pressure on the muscles. They can almost hurt a little when they're happening, but the idea is when they're over, your muscles feel really loose, really relaxed. A lot of the tension has been kind of rubbed and squeezed out of them. Of course, people here in Taiwan love to go for a foot massage after a walk. There are plenty of other shoulder and head massages are very nice as well.
And actually mentioning the massage after going for a walk, the cobblestones that we mentioned earlier, and in some ways, you can also think of the stones that you walk on in Taiwan when you're massaging your feet. but they're a little bit bigger stones, those cobblestones. So yeah, you go and you get your massage, you're feeling really good. And just a few steps away from the bathhouse is what? The Kaymakamlar Travel House. And that's a museum that used to be a mansion for the local governor. So the head of the area used to live in a mansion, a very grand, luxurious house with normally many rooms. And today definitely would have a lot of bathrooms. I never have figured out why a lot of times when they mention mansions, they're like 6 bedrooms, 9 bathrooms. I'm like, well, but then you have more than one bathroom for every bedroom. Why do you need so many bathrooms? I never quite figured that one out.
It's just fancy, really.
Fancy. Yeah. It's luxurious.
Exactly, because that's what a mansion is. It's the place where a very wealthy or very important person would live. You imagine it's going to be really nicely decorated. Right. It's probably going to have big gardens around it with fountains and statues and stuff like that. Kind of places now that are either, we would still probably call places in like Bel Air in Los Angeles as kind of mansions, fancy houses for the rich and the famous.
Yeah, the $1 million plus, or tens of millions of dollars plus.
A lot of the older ones, meanwhile, have kind of become like historical homes.
Right.
There's a lot of places in England that used to be big manors and mansions of dukes and other rulers that have been turned into museums that people will go and visit.
Well, in the old days, they would have been closed to the public possibly, but now over the time, if you want to be able to maintain these houses, you have to kind of open them to the public or turn them into museums so people can go in and look around.
Now, we're going to talk a little bit more about this travel house in just a moment. Right now, we're going to take a short break and listen to our Chinese teacher, and then we'll be right back.
Hello everyone, 我是派老师。今天讲解的是5月15号 Unit 8 Discover the Charm of Turkey on this Cultural Journey Day 1. 这是旅游单元，介绍的是土耳其。身上有虫的同学，这一课可得仔细听，好好学。这种虫叫做 travel bug。喜欢旅游的朋友应该身上都有旅游虫。到底什么是 travel bug 呢？好，那比方说 After her first solo backpacking trip through Europe, Maria caught the travel bug and now spends every chance she gets exploring different countries around the world. 那如果你身上也有旅游虫，下次不妨到土耳其去俊吉浴场享受土耳其浴，一定可以帮你解痒。好，我们现在一起来看学习重点吧。请看到第一段第一个句子，主要动词的部分。People often associate Turkey with the busy streets. Associate A with B 就是把 A 跟 B 联想在一起。再来，我们看到but 这个对的连接词所连接的第二个主要子句 The country's diverse cultural and natural treasures. 好，这里的 diverse 是形容词，在修饰后面的文化以及自然宝藏，所以 diverse 是多元的意思。再请同学看到 extend 这个动词，所以这个国家的宝藏并不仅限于在首都， extend 就是有拓展延伸出去的意思，并没有只有在伊斯坦堡才可以看到这些自然文化的宝藏。再来，我们看到第二个句子，抱歉，是第二段第三个句子。第三个句子呢，讲到了在土耳其，我们可以看到一些文化的古迹，包括我们刚刚提到的俊吉浴场 historic building。 historic 那就表示这栋建筑物是有相当的历史价值的。好，那再来，我们知道这个俊吉浴场到底是什么呢？原来是土耳其的浴场 Turkish bathhouse。 再来，请同学呢看到第四个句子，如果不知道土耳其浴到底在做什么，看到这个句子就了解了。 You'll have your body thoroughly scrubbed and massaged with soap。 好，原来啊，就是在蒸汽室蒸到满身大汗之后，会有专人为你洗澡，全身都会抹肥皂，还会帮你做按摩。请特别注意的是，这里的动词我们都用过去分词，因为你是在被动的接受被人家帮你刷身体啊，然后呢帮你按摩。
We'll take a short break and we'll be right back with part 2. So we carry on with a discussion of the Kaymakamla Travel House, this museum, which, like many old mansions, is a museum. Why is it such a good museum? Well, it's furnished in the style of Ottoman architecture. So the Ottoman Empire was what Turkey... Sorry, I keep saying that wrong. Turkey, that's it.
I think you probably got it right, too. I think there's, Turkey.
But before it was the Republic of Turkey, it was the Ottoman Empire, and it was that for many hundreds of years, this great, powerful empire. It ruled parts of North Africa and the Middle East and whole areas of Europe like Greece and Hungary. It controlled lots of different areas, and they were ruled by the Ottoman Turks, this particular group of Turkish people who came from Central Asia, took over the country, and it was the Ottomans were that particular nation. And so it's furnished in that style. To be furnished means all the furniture, the way things are set out, the style of it, the kind of carpets and things on the walls, the decoration. It's all about the interior style. Rather than the exterior, we use furnished to talk about how the interior design is done.
Right, and we're talking about Ottoman architecture. So you're talking about an architecture that was a real mixture of a lot of different things with the Byzantine architecture, the Iranian architecture, just a multiple of different Middle Eastern architectures that would combine together. So you've got these lovely spirals or you lovely domes. And that one example of something that might be known as Ottoman architecture is the Hagia Sophia. And if I look at it, I would say Hajj or Hagia Sophia. But I think it's actually Hagia Sophia. Again, we're not 100,000% positive most of the time on our pronunciations, but it does look like the Hagia Sophia, and that's a very famous building.
Big famous mosque. I'm not sure if it's still used for religious purposes. There was a while where they said, let's let everybody kind of celebrate here, but it may have gone back to being a mosque.
It might have.
It's a big famous church.
And that's an example of the Ottoman architecture. And the museum allows you a glimpse of life during the Ottoman Empire. I love the glimpse of life expression, right? You just get almost like you take a photograph and you get one quick image of what life was like during that time. In fact, the town set a model for urban development throughout the empire when it began to function as a trading center. So it set a model. It was a perfect example of what urban development or how a city should be built or put together or develop. Well, that was an example that was made by the Safranbolu as it grew throughout the empire. They said, hey, this is a good way to build a city when it began to function as a trading center. So a lot of different people would come to Safranbolu and they would trade there.
Which, of course, means they're bringing lots of wealth and money, so they've got the money to set it up.
And lots of variety, too.
Yeah, right? And lots of kind of ideas coming in. Any new ideas would have come here from as far as India or China or Western Europe and kind of get used in the different designs. We see now that the well-preserved buildings that survive today have consequently, so as a result of them being well-preserved, they've earned Safranbolu a spot on the UNESCO World Heritage List. So UNESCO is the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization.
And that's a mouthful.
It is.
We use the
UNESCO. Yeah.
UNESCO.
But it recognizes important places around the world that are good for science, are good for culture, are good for education, and they're important things that need to be preserved. And if they get on this heritage list, it means they're a valuable treasure for the world and humankind in general. And it's kind of saying people shouldn't either knock these down or develop them without permission or kind of, we're going to assign funds from the UN to just make sure these places stay in good condition and don't just fall into decay.
And, well, Safranbolu definitely is one of those areas that deserves to be on the World Heritage List. But we also can look around the area and see some pretty amazing things, too. And that's where we go here, where it says, however, don't confine yourself. Don't just force yourself to stay to visit. Don't confine your visit to Safranbolu's downtown areas. So don't force yourself to just stay in Safranbolu's downtown areas. Do something else. Why don't you hike to Hederlik Hill for an overlooking view of the town's red-tiled roofs? So the town has a lot of buildings that are red-tiled, like I was mentioning earlier with the spa. they are just quite mesmerizing to look at. So this area, this hill, will allow you to get the overlook. You'll be able to look over the whole town and see these beautiful tiled roofs.
A tile, of course, is usually made out of clay, maybe slate, some other material that's often fired up and baked.
In a kiln.
In a kiln. Red tiled means they've got this red color, which is pretty typical of certain types of clay. You get a lot of red clay.
Yeah.
And tiles can be used, the thicker, harder ones are used to make roofs. They overlap so that the water doesn't get through.
Right.
But you'd also have tiles on floors, tiles in bathrooms, tiles made into mosaics to make art. Just kind of break up something and then reconstruct it into a pattern, that kind of thing.
The beauty of tiles, there's so many different ways to use them, and there's so many different colors that you can bring out in them and bring into the house. The kitchens can be tiled with a bunch of different colors that really bring a vibrant glow to that room. The kitchen is often the heart of a house, and the tiles can really bring that out when you're talking about the ceramic tiles that might be on the floor or on the walls.
And they're usually like a repeated shape and pattern. You can get kind of completely crazy styles, but the idea is it's the same shape and pattern. They fit together to cover a surface or cover a roof.
Yeah, and they're the things that a lot of times remain when a city is destroyed. Like in Pompeii, once they cleared away a lot of the volcanic ash, what they could still see were these mosaics on the floors of the houses. The tiles remained after everything else was destroyed.
So Hidilek Hill is just one place, though, and we've also got, in the meantime, Tokutla Canyon awaits those not afraid of heights. So in the meantime is just a phrase meaning something you can do at the same time or around the same time. Like it can be used as a contrast, so one person doing one thing and one person doing the other thing, or it can just say in the meantime.
Meanwhile.
The same while. Yeah, exactly, at the same point in time. So this canyon is not for those who are a little nervous in high places. It has a glass platform suspended from the edge of the cliff, which does offer breathtaking views 80 meters above the ground. So if something's suspended, it's kind of out there over the air and it's not built on top of anything.
Right.
It could be held from above, it could be attached at one end, but it is kind of poking out there without any other visible supports.
It's kind of dangling in midair if you look at it. If you look at the picture of it, it's this fan-like glass bottom space where you can stand on. But I don't know that I would want to do it because there's nothing underneath it. It is suspended over nothing.
Does it have a railing on the end?
Yeah.
Okay, I was going to say that.
And it kind of goes up a little bit, but I still don't know that I would be encouraging myself to go up there.
But it is over the edge of a cliff. A cliff, of course, is a very high rock face. You think of the big cliffs in the middle of Taroko Gorge where all the birds in the kind of swallows area fly around. Very tall, high walls that have been carved over the years by wind and rain and seawater or rivers. They're not always straight down. They can kind of bend in and out, and they've got usually lots of interesting rock features. Another famous set is the White Cliffs of Dover the British coast. There's this famous view as you arrive across from France, these big, tall, very white cliffs to show the edge of England.
And they're oftentimes very sheer, a lot of times very straight up and down, right? So you don't want to fall over the cliff. So standing on something that is suspended over the cliff, but you do get breathtaking views. It's like, oh my gosh, it almost makes you catch your breath as you're looking down. Finally, before you depart, before you leave, don't miss out on the classic souvenir, Turkish Delight. So don't skip, don't forget to buy, don't miss out on. You definitely want to do this one thing. You want to buy or taste some Turkish Delight. And Turkish Delight is this kind of a curious thing. It's a gel of starch and sugar. And it's maybe, I don't know if you call it so gooey, but it has a little bit of a squish to it.
Yeah, it's like very soft mochi kind of thing.
Yeah, and a lot of times you add additional things, like you'll add honey, you'll add nuts, you'll add fruit, and definitely some spices. And that'll bring out the flavors that are just absolutely incredible to the point that they will delight you. And that's why they are Turkish delights.
Yep. And so the article says these are tasty sweets, and those sold in Safranbolu are generally cheaper and less sweet than in I'm just going to say Turkey's main cities. So, yeah, they're cheaper, which is great, and they're less sweet, which also means that I do find these very sweet.
Right.
Like, you can have, like, maybe 3 or 4, and then you're like, okay, I'm not going to eat anymore because they are quite overpoweringly strong and sweet.
But I would definitely not miss out on trying them.
Now, there's plenty more to see in Turkey than we've discussed today, and we're going to look at a few more places tomorrow. Right now, though, we'll hand over once again to our Chinese teacher before we wrap things up.
我们继续看到第3段。第2个句子，请同学注意，第2个句子是分词构句。那在意思上来说，当然前半部也是在讲这个博物馆，博物馆里面有它的摆设，那整个风格呢，就是属于鄂图曼土耳其的建筑风格 ，furnished in the style of Ottoman architecture。好，那请同学特别注意的，其实这个字并不难记。我们都知道家具叫 furniture， 所以这个 furnished 那常常就是跟这些室内的家具或者这些装潢是有关系的。好，再来我们请看到第3个句子 In fact, the town sets a model for urban development。 我们知道 set a model 就是为什么谁为什么人立下了典范风范 set a model 哪一方面的呢For urban development， 所以都市要发展，可以呢以这个城市为典范。好，那后来这个城镇呢变成了什么 ？It began to function as a trading center。原来呢是贸易中心，有了贸易中心的功能。好，那我们看到第4个句子 ，The well-preserved buildings that survive today。这些建筑物保留至今，保存相当完善。这 survive 我们呢可以把它解释成什么？这些建筑物保留到现在，这些建筑物呢并没有呢因为随着时间的过往而消失。好 ，survive today 一直到现在都还有。那保存完善，我们可以用 well preserved 这个复合形容词 well preserved。好。那再来，我们看到第4段，有机会到土耳其一游的同学、听众，千万呢不要只有去我们的番红花城而已。好，不要只有留在市中心 ，Don't confine your visit to downtown areas。那应该还要去哪里啊？可以去山上走走，旁边有个山丘，去那里干嘛？看到第2个句子。For an overlooking view of the town's red tile roofs， 上去就可以俯瞰整个城镇。那很多的房子，它们的屋顶都有红色的瓦铺成 red tiled。那请特别把这个 red tile 的 ed 圈起来，这也是复合形容词 tile 原本名词，可是因为这里是复合形容词，我们加上了这个 ed red tiled。好，那再来呢，请同学看到第3个句子，逗点之后的 with 之后 with a glass platform。 那这个 with 呢，通常都是附带说明啊，让我们知道说这个峡谷怎么样。这个峡谷呢，它原来啊是有一个玻璃平台，可以让游客、让观光客往下看，那会有相当令人叹为观止的景色。所以这边 with a glass platform，请特别注意的是 suspended 这个 ed with 之后是不可能出现原形动词的。那这里呢，我们加上 ed， 那因为这里我们要显示的这个平台架构放在这里，它是悬空的。好，那它不是自行完成的，所以我们要表示它的被动，我们加的是 ed。在这里有个玻璃平台，它就在什么悬崖边。这里可以看到相当令人叹为观止的景色 breathtaking views， 我们用的形容词是 breathtaking。 好，以上就是我们对于这个旅游单元第1天课程所做的中文讲解，谢谢大家。
So that's day 1 of our cultural journey through Turkey or Turkey. Join us again tomorrow for part 2. See you then. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.